from the Brock, now we're gonna go to the Rock. The Pesco Oversight Committee.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm dealing with the old, was that on camera? This one?
Yeah.
Not a whole lot to report. We had, in Q4, we had 7 new firms approved, and the names are listed here. Nothing creative, nothing to get excited about. In fact, some of them are just acronyms, which means they're going to make it because they're in the right industry. It's really not that exciting. But this next one, I can't wait for the next one because we've been busy. So hang up for the next meeting.
Okay.
That's all I want.
I've got a teaser for the next.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, good.
When did I become official on that committee? Because I haven't seen any of these yet, so I'm going to start seeing them, I guess.
If you'd like to, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, this could be the best committee ever, Mr. Chairman, if I never actually have it.
It's up to the chair.
Yeah.
You are not allowed to
Official,
say
our way,
that,
but
trust me.
good taste.
Somebody will address.
Oh, God.
Yeah, CPAs are generally not very creative.
And you'll only probably see it if Joel doesn't answer you back.
Public members.
Yeah, and that's really the way it works.
All right, thank you for that report. And now report from the SOC, Scholarship Oversight Committee.
So I'm gonna defer for the most part to Kimberly in a minute. And there's quite a few pages here of a presentation, but I only want to say a couple things here on, if you reference on page 81. First of all, I've been a full review, of the last 3 years, I've been a full reviewer, application reviewer for 2 of those years, and 1 as a backup. And the backup is in baseball parlance, a closer, one last set of eyes, for whatever reason, that they want another set of eyes to look at. And that's a much less time commitment than the full reviewer. What I'm telling you, it's a very humbling experience and a very satisfying experience. So if you have any time at all to participate in this process, it's quite an experience. Secondly, a couple things relative to page 81. The receipts also include realized as well as unrealized gains and losses. So the $384,000 is total revenue for the year. The important point there is that it covered last year's investment returns, covered 92 cents on the dollar of all the annual scholarships. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is that under the disbursements, it doesn't say it specifically here, but the foundation has migrated to virtually 50% of the scholarships going to the master's applicants. And that's a big change in just the last couple of years, a big increase. And with that, I'll defer to Kimberly to finish the presentation.
Well, first I'd like to acknowledge I have a staff person in charge of this, and I asked her to throw together a presentation, and what I was expecting to be more like a chart or two, she created this beautiful document with you with storytelling and everything in it, which is great. Maybe the big part is, we started this master's scholarship this last year, making it $8,000 for those going after a master's versus the $5,000 for the normal scholarship, and I believe that was Rajiv that had that idea at one of your meetings. We based it on how many applicants we'd had in the past. When we gave you the budget originally, we thought that we might have 20 master's scholarships, and we ended up with actually 31 master's scholarships with our combined scholarship program and yours. So it was pretty robust. We were really excited with how many people actually applied for that. So on our budget request this year, we did increase how many master's scholarships we thought we would be giving. When you look at one of the things when we first took over, the foundation first took over actually running the scholarship program for the state board through the legislation that was done. One of the things we knew that the legislators were really interested in was seeing more diversity in the program. They'd like to see more diversity in all of the programs that are there. And so we really highlighted where we saw some increases and some successes in diversity. Although we don't call it out, we don't say that we have separate diversity or minority scholarships. We are really seeing an increase in applicants in that area and definitely winners in that area. So.
Along those lines, do reviewers look at the applications blind, or do they have some indication as to what somebody's diversity, equity, inclusion category might be?
we don't remove the names, so there's still that. However, we try to keep them as, that there is some mystery to them, I guess, is the best part to say. The way that we do the review process, we've modified it each year, but we try not to inundate our reviewers, so we give them a small amount to review, and they, this year, the modification is they won't be reviewing the whole application, they'll be reviewing the transcripts, most of the general information, and at least the first resume that talks about why they want to be a CPA. Second round goes a little bit more in depth into the other essays that really talk about obstacles that they might have encountered becoming a CPA, and a few of the other things that kind of establish the need for the program. And when we do that second part, we actually pull out a lot of the other information that's there. So we try to, and the same, I also have to clarify, not a single reviewer does not see exactly what another reviewer does. It's a random selection. So you might have 20 that you're reviewing. Brian's gonna have a different 20. If all of you were doing it, you would all have a different 20 that you're doing. We want to make sure that every application during each step of the process, and there's 3 of them, has at least 6 sets of eyes, and we monitor for any really strange grading within that. So we give them the grading scale and kind of the range, and every once in a while we'll see a real huge outlier, where a student might have scored 28 points, 27 points, 28 points, and then like 15. And so we try to look at those outliers and see if we can get another set of eyes. That's really what those backup reviewers do, is anything that, anytime a student hasn't had their application reviewed a certain number of times, or that there's a very strange number that's associated to it, to try to see if we're encountering any of those biases.
I have a related comment to Tom's, which is a great point. I think it would enhance the appeal of the report. It's a great report, by the way. But it would enhance it if you could also talk a little bit about the diversity of the reviewers themselves. Because in the modern literature on diversity, who's doing the reviewing is also important. So I think knowing who the reviewers are in your composition, I'm sure it's a pretty diverse group, but that would add to the kind of overall impact of the report.
And I probably don't need to go over all of the details on there, because I know that you can review them, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Really just want to point out that our scholarship recipients are an incredibly talented group, really highly impressive. I get the comments back from most of the reviewers saying I would never be able to win one of these scholarships with this kind of competition.
Exactly.
So
That was the message I was trying to convey.
and some really amazing experiences and obstacles that the students have overcome to get there. So, and if you had the opportunity, and if you do have the opportunity to attend one of the scholarship receptions, this year was so amazing to just see the diversity in that room of the students coming there. So.
By this year, you mean last June or whatever that was?
We had it in May each year,
Yeah.
Technically, I guess it's 2020 now, so, well, the next one will be like May 7th this year, but yeah, so in May we have a reception, we do invite you to that. I try to make sure that you get an invitation personally, and I also do mention it here, so.
And I did attend one 2 years ago, the year before last.
They're really amazing.
Really,
These
really
people are
They
bright, smart, they've overcome all kinds of obstacles. It's very intimidating. But it's really, I see the WSC, that's, I know, I don't wanna see that.
3.75.
I don't wanna see that.
Yeah, that's,
No, the WSCP does a really wonderful job of administering this and accomplishing our goals. I think that, this is really a fantastic thing that we do, and I don't think we promote it enough, right? And I think we should make sure that we, as board members, when we talk to people, I certainly do when I teach ethics, I point this out every time. I point out all the scholarships that are given for the number of applicants, and there's some additional scholarships other than board scholarships. How many total scholarships are there?
the total is 84.
And there's like 400
Here we go.
There
applicants.
was $519,000 scholarships there, so we added a little over $100,000.
So it's really, really fantastic.
How do you get your pool? How do you publicize this?
That's great, it's edited so I can speak. So on the college campuses, we've had relationships on college campuses for years. This program, the scholarship program's been around since 1974. Obviously, it's grown substantially with this. But we have a full-time dedicated staff that has been out on college campuses for years, and I'm
Just to
gonna.
let you know, we're all safe. It's a faulty pull station at the front desk. Sorry about the interruption.
Thank you for the update.
Thank you. Better safe than
Appreciate it.
sorry, you know?
We also have expanded our footprint to reach out to a lot of the community colleges. So we've created more relationships there. Our foundation trustees all are owning different relationships with different campuses. So we have really good representation getting out on campuses to let them know. Obviously, we still have student members that qualify, so we let them know that way. So we've had a good outreach into there, and I have to tell you, when you're actually awarding the scholarships, it might be the best way to get their attention. I had plenty of opportunities. I remember going out to Gonzaga and saying, I'm giving out $60,000 in scholarships tonight, and I got their attention. So it's very impressive when you can see numbers like that. So.
Grades.
Those are significant scholarships. So thank you. Any other comments, thoughts?
Just on that point, it's really good if you can go to the presentation ceremony, because when I was newly appointed, of course, I'd been director of investigations and dealing with a lot of, disciplinary cases and seeing kind of the dark side of the profession. It was really heartening to interact with those students, and really it was inspiring. So,
Yeah, so everyone's doing a great job on that, especially the WSCPA. Title Reform Task Force, I have nothing to report yet, but this is going to be a very active.
I just want to.
Very active committee.
We have a draft that will be coming out probably by the end of February. It will first go to Bruce, then it will go to everybody else to take a look at. And then I'll have to work with the governor's office, which I said about that time frame. About the time that Bruce is done with it, then I'll probably send it to the governor's office as well. So we can kind of do it in tandem, because we want to get well ahead of this for the next legislative session. And to be clear, we're planning this a year out, so this will be the 2021 legislature. We have been conversations with the society about possibly them sponsoring the bill. I think agency request legislation, but I'll run that process in tandem until we get to the end of the process and decide which route to take on that. But I appreciate your participation in this.
So when do you think, roughly, do we think we'll have a copy to distribute to the committee? Does the committee become
Probably for the
engaged?
next board meeting,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So again, that's just a lot of heavy lifting. It's going to be a lot.
Well, the process has been, I write it, Jen takes a look at it, tears it up, sends it back to me. I write it again, give it to Jen, she tears it up, takes it back to me. And hopefully, I think this last time, I got a few things to do, and we should be okay.
Okay.
It's my editor over there.
And Charles, why don't you just keep going?
Okay, so the budget status report, pages 90 and 92, I have sort of a bifurcated report this time around, because our fund balance is good, our expenditure is in line with what's been budgeted for this year, with the caveat that as long as our IT expenditures do not become unexpectedly large at the end of the current biennium, we should be okay. Something else happened, however. We received a budget from the governor's office detailing a $330,000 tab for WATEC, which is the Washington Technical effort to provide desktop support for a number of different agencies. And we have participated in that, because initially it was quite a good value. It went up a little bit, we went up to $130,000 in the last time around, pretty close to that. And now it's going up to $330,000. Now, when this sort of thing happens, you don't get a call from the governor's office, they just put this on the budget. And you discuss it with your budget person, Paul Pitar over there at SAS, Small Agency Financial Services. Now, I've talked to Paul. Paul recommended that we speak to OFM about this, Ramona Neighbors at OFM. So we did hold a phone conference about this, and the difficulty with this being billed this way for the WATEC desktop support services is that over approximately a decade, it could deplete our fund balance in O2J. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I was surprised to find out there might be some flexibility on the part of the governor's office to attenuate the size of the bill for participation in the service. So we're working on that. So we are in active discussions with OFM about this, and I will keep you apprised of what's happening. That's something we want to keep our eye on. Okay, so licensing modernization project, I have a report that includes Jen, that she's gonna go and talk a little bit about. Go ahead, Jen.
So anybody interested, and I know I said it before in our last meeting, anybody interested in tracking how this project is going, you can definitely go to the OCIO's website, and if you have any questions or interested, let me know, I can send you the link. They have a dashboard with all the IT projects that are going in the state of Washington. Obviously, we're on there for our modernization project. So our project is gonna, its completion date is June of 2021. We're hoping to accelerate it and have it done by the end of this year. Speaking with the with our integrator, they don't foresee that being an issue. But of course, I'm going through all this gated funding. So we're in gate 2, which means that we're in the planning and procurement stage. So we had the integrators come to our office for 2 days. They did an accelerated, staff did a great job of showing the application, current state, gave them what we see our future state to be, and they felt that it was a very, I mean, we have a very complex system. There's a lot of, and we have this issue and this issue. Oh, and by the way, if this is a certificate holder and they come into a license, we have all these other requirements, but it's not something that they can't deal with. I think it's really exciting for us as we move in the platform, the look and the ease and the feel. We are using Salesforce, and so are other state agencies. So at this point, we are in the discovery phase. I've been in phone conversations. They're trying to get the requirements documents together, making sure that they're meeting all of our needs and all the applications that we need done. And then what we will start to do is then we'll start going into the design phase. So that's where we are today. I have a discovery phase that they have 4 weeks to complete, and I should have that done here in the middle of February. And then we'll start moving on to the next section. And during this whole time, because we're in gated funding, I'm only able to get a little bit of money at a time. And so we finally got our letter for gate 2 funding, and so I'm trying to check all the boxes, so that way I can start asking for gate 3 funding as well. And so that's where we're at. And we're just really excited. I think the staff they've put a lot of work into this. I mean, over the years of all the, I call them Disneyland ideas, because we have so many of them throughout the years of, I wish we had this, I wish we could do this, I wish the system could do. And they're looking at us, it's like, I equate it to buying a car, you know, a person who has an older car, and they're like, man, I hope I get Bluetooth. And they don't realize Bluetooth is like, that comes with it, there's nothing extra with that, right?
Want to tracking that.
Yeah, so it's tracking you. So it's that, and we go and talk to the integrator, we're like, we hope we can get this, and they're just like, oh, that's standard, you're gonna get that. So that's very exciting. I said, you'll probably give us more things than we know what to deal with. And I think it's gonna be exciting for the licensees. My hope is, yes, you still have to go through Secure Access Washington, so for those of you guys, I can't change that. That's working with the state of Washington. I hired our CIO, and that was the first question I asked her. I was like, I need to get out of Secure Access Washington. She comes back to me and says, tough luck, we're in the state of Washington, we have to do that. So, but with that being said, I think the application-wise, being able to use your mobile devices, it's just, and I'm hoping that the applications are just simpler. We've streamlined these applications, made a lot of changes, stop some of the confusion I think that we see, and we're just really looking forward to it. This is a low year. Just to throw out some renewal numbers, we had our year, we sent out 4,500 renewals for licensees, and we're at 469 for firms. So this is a perfect year for us to do this project, and I do feel that we are on course and we can get this done by the end of the year. So I'm pushing staff, but at the same time, I think that the staff's ready, and we're just going to help each other out. I want everybody to be a user right now, like testers, and they know the material. That's the nice thing about this, and I think one of the things the integrator said is, normally when you go into businesses and you're trying to implement, you don't get to talk to the people who do the work day to day. I go, oh yeah, they tell me every day, and they're going to be in these conversations. There are SMEs, and we're going to try to get the best product out there. And I already set the bar and said, don't expect perfection, but let's get it as close to it. It can't be worse than what it is today. And on the upside of it, we have a good system today. And as much as we all complain about it, people come in, people look at our system like, how do you get that? And we're like, no, let's wait till we get our new system. And so we're really excited about that.
And that dashboard you mentioned is really amazing. I mean, it's public record for anyone, but you can look on Board of Accounts. You can find all the project documents, all the scope. Well, this is a big deal. This is a, $1.7 million software project for 9-person agency. So staff, everyone's going to be really busy.
Yep.
Busy this year. So.
Okay, the next, oh, go ahead,
Go
are you
ahead.
done, Jen?
And so, yeah,
So one of the Disneyland features of the new system will be the CPE reporting and renewal application. And I want to say that I'm excited about this because we have a little bit of an intractable compliance issue with CPE audits. Unfortunately, the most recent one still showed about a 10% non-compliance rate on the random sample, not on the repeat folks. And I was a lot more optimistic earlier, a few board meetings ago, when we were kind of combining the rate. If we broke it out, we would see a lot more compliance. I think that personally 10% is unacceptable. That means that 1 in 10 CPAs is not doing all their CPE as they should be. However, the new system will require them to list it. I'll let Jen kind of elaborate on that a little bit if there's anything more she wants to share. But I think by writing it down and putting it into the system is going to help people realize that they're short, that they need to get busy and get something done before the end of the deadline, or to request the exemption or the extension which we embodied in the last bit of CPE rule change.
Jen, this is Maury. I just wanted to let you know I've joined.
Was there anything else you wanted to add about that?
I think so. So for those of you who are CPAs and renew, so when we went on to 10, everybody was a big shock that you had to list what 4-hour board-approved ethics you're taking. And so we'll still keep that in the renewal application. But going forward, when it talks about the 120, the rest of the CPE, we're going to then have them list those out. We will have a more robust CPE tracker that we have currently today. Currently, our tracker, when we built this system back in 10, we didn't really ask. We were just so happy to go online, I'll be honest. We didn't ask for things that we should have. And so we've had some major issues with the tracker. And I think going forward, we will have a robust tracker that will allow people to input their information, and it will come back in. So they can go put all their CPE in the tracker currently, and then when you go into your renewal application, it will show on the CPE tracker. So some of the things, I know some people are working in firms, or they're in different organizations where they keep their CPE, so we're working with the vendor to see how they would be able to put that into the system without having to double type that. But I think going forward for us, the biggest concern we always see, as well as obviously when we see it in the audit, are if they don't realize that they don't have 120 hours. And now, especially too with the new amendment coming up and the confusion with that, we're hoping to streamline that and help the CPAs so that they can see that they are short, or and then try to correct that mistake, or or try to go in during the year, track their CPE, and then realize, oh no, I'm short, or I didn't do the 4 hours of board-approved ethics, or. So that's what we're hoping for moving forward.
One question on the tracker, are you intending it will also track subsets of CPE, in other words, the yellow book, et cetera? Okay.
Very simple tool, but yet robust for what we have.
So Jennifer is a lowly sole practitioner who has 120 one-hour webinars. No, wait, I'll have more than that because I'm going to have nano learning now too. Am I literally going to type in the date, the course title, 1 or .2,
Yes.
and I'm going to have to type that from 100 to 200 times?
For however many,
Do you have to attach a certificate?
I love that.
No.
Just
No,
60
okay.
times.
Some
Don't
of
do
them
that with
actually
nano.
attach the certificate.
This is our way of moving to, we've always talked about doing the 100% audit. Our hope is that we would be able to have at least you listed, we wouldn't have to attach the certificates, but then we would then be able to audit during the renewal year instead of waiting towards the end, which what we do. And by that time, individuals been holding their license, practicing, calling themselves a CPA, and not meeting the renewal requirements to renew. But and that's what we deal with sometimes on the enforcement side. So of individuals now saying, well, I want to retire my license then, so I didn't meet their CPE requirement.
Is it going to be able to upload data from the WSCPA, AICPA, or other providers?
We're working on that.
So I think
Those
we
are the
need to
questions
explore.
we're asking.
Yes. Nano learning usually is pretty much web-based, so there will be some kind of electronic record.
Yeah, but it sounds like I'm typing in every course I take.
I think it's in a development stage, but let's explore that, Jen, and see if we can't find a way to make it a little easier. Maybe a document you have or an Excel spreadsheet or something that you upload. We'll talk about that more. It is in development, so.
Well, I've been around long enough to where we used to have to submit this decades ago. And I built a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, and I put in the documents that it used to, with the A&A and the technical and the non-technical. And if there's a way that you could link it to some, different software uploads, it'd be great if you're all
We are looking
looking
at
at
that.
Okay, that's all I really have. Talked about the bills, and we talked about title reform.
Okay, Taylor.
So page 94 and 95 is kind of the enforcement stats for the last quarter and the last year. And in 2019, we did have 21 disciplinary issues that were resolved through remedial resolution that were CPE. So that is something that's coming up pretty regularly, although 11 of those were Washington ethics, due to either straight up failure to take Washington ethics or having taken it to make it a previous deficiency and double counting it essentially. So those are kind of the common recurring themes we have there. For the non-administrative issues, the things we kind of see the most lately, at least in the past quarter, have been issues on tax returns. Those have kind of been the prominent issue, and then failure to enroll in peer review or failure to complete the peer review that they were supposed to. So those have kind of been the big thematic elements we've had in.
Are tax issues increasing? I mean, between federal tax reform and every state changing its rules, are we? There's kind of I think there's kind of like a time bomb in the process.
Off the top of my head, I haven't really seen anything year to year. It's usually more seasonal,
Okay.
kind of following up the tax return due dates. It's kind of when those elements have come through. So, any questions on those two pages? And then pages 96, 97, after some discussion, we want to do some kind of ethics training issues. So the first topic that we wanted to discuss was conflict of interest, because that's kind of one of those more conceptual issues that we see from time to time. On the first page, page 96, there's kind of some excerpts from the AFCPA, which is much more descriptive than our very brief board rule. So these are kind of the matters and rules that we review when we get complaints like this, and when we review them with you, the CBM. We try to include these in our case report, and this is kind of the basis that we analyze the allegations in the complaint, kind of evidence we see. These are very judgmental oriented, and on page 97, I list a couple examples we see the most kind of in the conflict of interest realm, which is CPA providing services to a couple that's either divorcing or has divorced, and usually the CPA's been there through the entire wonderful, happy process. And then a CPA involved in business with a client. Those are kind of the two times these come up the most. Within the past week, Mark forwarded me information about the Oregon State Board of Accountancy adopting a rule, I believe, to require the CPA to get a conflict of interest waiver from his clients when they're going through a divorce or when they realize the divorce is coming on. And that's kind of maybe something to consider for this board, because it very much protects both the CPA but also the client that they're providing services to, just to keep everybody on the same page, keep them informed. Because when we see these issues come up, the complaints, it's usually one of the clients is kind of unaware, doesn't give full thought to the potential conflict until after the fact. And so this would kind of help the CPA say, no, we talked about this, we disclosed this, you agreed to this situation that by its very nature is kind of in opposition to one another. So that's kind of the broad strokes of kind of the conflict interest. We very much appreciate CBMs looking at those very carefully, because it is very much comes down to judgment and whether the CPA have, in our minds, in your minds, and with the rules, took adequate steps to protect themselves. And in past complaints, we've fallen both ways, like yes, they took the appropriate steps here in a divorce, or here they didn't quite go that extra step that they needed to, because CPAs are held to a very high standard.
The waiver thing that Oregon adopted, and so by rule, they say if client tells you they're divorcing, you have to get a waiver. You have to get informed consent. It's something to think about, because you're really protecting licensees from themselves. Because licensees are just trying to help people, they have these long-term relationships, and they don't recognize at that moment they've been told about a divorce that a threat has arisen under the Code of Professional Conduct. And of the most explosive complaints that we get, and we've probably all seen as CBMs, are involving divorcing clients. Because typically somebody's really angry and has lots of extra time now that they're not in a relationship. So very, very explosive situation, very high risk for CPAs. So it's something worth considering.
Yeah, no, sorry, one other note is, we're kind of shifting our tactics a little bit with Charles has kind of shifted our tactics a little bit in resolving cases, wherein I think about last year, we started doing a statement of charges and a consent agreement simultaneously to give the respondent CPA kind of their full rights and opportunities for hearing. Lately, if they don't agree to that consent agreement, don't really give them a counter proposal that we find acceptable, we're just going forward to hearing, which is probably why you've been receiving a lot more emails in that nature from Kirsten lately, and probably some more upcoming. So we may actually end up with hearings as a way to potentially solve some of these where the CPA doesn't want to agree to the proposal that we put forth. And for context, a lot of other state boards hold more regular hearings on complaints. I think we're kind of an anomaly in the sense that we haven't had one in 8, 9, 10 years.
So, forgive me for my ignorance, but does the ethics require the CPA to disengage from one half the client base from the other?
It's very, like in a divorce or something like that.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, so it's not explicitly required, that's something that the CPA can do to kind of protect themselves and take that, mitigating step to kind of reduce their own risk, but you could get a waiver. It's, again, the rules are not exactly explicit, and this is what you must do. It's kind of, if there's the appearance of a conflict, or, if it's disclosed or not. So that's part of the reason that makes those complaints so difficult, is it's not quite as prescriptive.
Yeah, they're required to bring, under the AICPA code, to bring the threat down to an acceptable level. And then it's subjective how they do that. So they can get a waiver, give everyone informed consent. I was asking CPAs to kind of maybe draft up a legal document, which maybe they need some help with that. Or they could disengage as kind of like best practices. But that's really, the standard's kind of vague.
Well, and so you're saying that the divorcing parties could say, yeah, you can represent us both? And is that-
Yep. They say that, and then they go back on their words.
Yes.
It is no guarantee that the CPA has gone through all the trouble to sign an agreement or something like that, but the fireworks won't start anyway. But anyway, it's one of those common elements in these kind of cases, so.
That's part of the value of that Oregon rule, I think, as well, is sometimes they'll, both parties will kind of allow the CPA to go on, provide services to both parties, and then after the fact, much later, be like, no, I didn't realize there's a conflict of interest, I don't like this. When you think it would be kind of apparent on its face, by the nature of a divorce or something like that, but that waiver helps, as Mark said, reduce it to a more acceptable level by saying this was very explicit, all parties were informed, all parties consented, and it's kind of a best practice either that or the disengaging.
The waivers of parties kind of agreeing that the CPA has, limited certain things that they normally have, like subordination of judgment, things like that, is limited. The waiver would reflect confidentiality, all these things people complain about at the end.
So did Oregon provide sample wording to?
No.
Oh, they
Yeah.
just said you
No,
have
they
to
just
do
said
it,
you have
but
to
we're
do
not
it.
gonna give you any sample wording.
Exactly.
Interesting.
That's usually
Okay.
how it works.
Okay.
So, your turn.
Okay, thank you. With that, we're gonna have it's like 8 after, but we're gonna keep going because we're almost done. But we're gonna have a very brief executive session with Bruce, so probably like 5 minutes.
Sure.
5 minutes. So if all,
You could force it too, if you want to do that, you have a comment and then go to.
You could switch it.
oh, let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll have our 5 minutes. Okay, public comment.
Yes, that one.
Okay. Who's on?
Thank you.
We got 2 folks who want to make comment.
Yep. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, we have 3 people signed up. Jeremy.
No, thanks.
Okay, that was short, thank you. Ken.
Thank you. Ken
Ken, one
Smith.
thing, you're continuing to tape this, correct?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
if you tape, it'd be great to identify at the beginning start, so we can let everyone know at the start of the meeting that it was being taped, would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
Good. Complete
Yes.
right to tape.
Thank you. So my name is Ken Smith, Central Washington University professor. I'll give a quick background about why I'm here, and then some of the concerns that I think are still in front of the board, the 9 appointed board members by the governor. And it was useful to hear that clarity earlier in the meeting, that the governor appoints both your executive director as well as you as a board, and that creates a position that you're in. You also have the RCWs, and you have to interpret that. The biggest question is, if someone has a concern in this state with an audit done by the state auditor's office, there is no clear path to relief for the work done by those professionals, some of whom have CPA behind their name. Some of those individuals do not have CPA behind their name, and yet they engage in public accounting, as we all understand that. They issue a report and they use words like auditing standards or governmental auditing standards, and they sign their name to that. Okay? So when I read subsection 12, and that was first brought to my attention, I thought, well, this doesn't apply to someone doing audit as defined in the definition section of the accounting chapter. Certainly shouldn't apply to someone doing a report as defined by the accounting section, and certainly shouldn't apply to someone doing the practice of public accounting as narrowly defined. The easiest remedy could be to put comma in subsection 12, comma, except for those doing audit as defined in the definitions, 1, practice of public accounting as defined, and report. Okay? I think that the exception was not intended for me when I was on a school board as an elected member, or if I was the manager of Parks and Rec and a CPA. You shouldn't be able to tell me how to Parks and Rec or how to school board. I don't think it makes sense, and the way the law is written may say that, but I don't think it makes sense that you couldn't hold someone holding a license accountable to their license when they're engaging in the activities solely preserved by their license. So I was surprised when I submitted the complaint on a particular issue on the behalf of citizens who came to me trying to understand accounting that the board would not investigate. That shocked me, quite honestly. That happened in May. We still don't know. Your citizens don't know, and a very advanced user like me does not know the path to seek relief, whether that's through an executive level, the governor's level, or for you, whether that's through the legislative level, or whether that's through the courts, through something like an administrative appeal or some other mechanism. So the number one thing we need from you, we the citizens, and there were 3 other citizens who wanted to be here who all had various issues that disallowed them, and that's why I'm recording. When we don't carefully track how the money gets to the mission, especially in government, there is harm. Most of our governmental dollars go to people that are in some way, shape, or form vulnerable. And some of the issues that have arisen have resulted in harms. And one of the people who was going to be here will send you an email and explicate some of those harms. This is a very serious issue. And there are millions of dollars, not your dollars, not my dollars, but the public's dollars. I do believe that by not taking action, you are failing to protect the public interest. And I think you need to wrestle with that. And I think you need to do it in public. I'm not sure that this qualifies for something in the very narrow Open Public Meeting Act exceptions. There's very few things that you can do in executive session. I don't think talking about a wrestling match that you may have with the governor who appointed you is one of those things. Litigation would be. And then I gave you the handout. The other thing that I think I would draw your attention to, and I appreciate the board members who started this conversation, it's going to be uncomfortable because we have a situation where there's no obvious path to relief and an expert user didn't know how to get or help the citizen get relief. On slide 4, awesome! I'll keep going, try and talk about it.
We'll see it.
On
Hopefully
slide 4,
they're getting shorter all the time.
exactly. Subpart C, that's on that first page, RCW 18.04.045. So this is kind of your powers, and it lists all the different things you can do. Sub 9.
Can you come up here in the front?
Okay, yeah,
I'm cold, yeah.
that's no problem. So on slide 6, it has subsection 18.04.045, part 9. It says that you have the power, in some sense the obligation, to provide consumer alerts to train the public. So no matter what choice you make, please let the public know you have no recourse, or this is the recourse. If you want to go this, you need to go through law. You just need And we can, one choice also, of course, is to change the law, comma, except for these public accounting things. So that's the comments that I have. I appreciate your time, and I do want to say I appreciate the professionalism of you as a board and the professionalism both of Mark and Charles as we come back and forth with emails, trying to understand what's going on. I appreciate the Attorney General's office for providing. I wish you would ask for the Attorney General opinion letter. I looked, there is no Attorney General opinion letter on this. There's a big difference between verbal legal advice and written guidance. You can ask for the Attorney General, say, hey, someone says the preamble, we have to protect the public, including governmental, explicitly includes here, and sub 12 says we can't apply this to governmental. The law is in conflict. The law is unclear. Let us know, and then when they give the AGO opinion, then that guides the legislature in what they can and should do, and that's probably where this should be decided, is in the legislature. But you kind of, the AGO opinion is the easiest, quickest way to, I think, get really binding stuff, and then it can go to the legislature, and then the community can decide, do we want to be able to hold, what's the path we want for relief for CPAs practicing in government? And there's over 2,000 audits. This is material. This is not a small item. I think the 9 of you should wrestle with it in public. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your patience with the building. Scott?
Scott Wolfley with the State Auditor's Office. I also wanted to take a moment just to say thank you to.
Maybe you should stand up here.
To the chair, to the director, and